Melissa Etheridge. And on Friday night, we'll preview the 2010 World Cup, which gets underway this week in South Africa. Tonight, though, we begin with a man who has been in the news a whole lot of late, Congressman Joe Sestak. Following a decorated career in the U.S. Navy, the congressman is now the Democratic nominee for the U.S. Senate after defeating five-term Pennsylvania incumbent Arlen Specter. He joins us tonight from Philadelphia. Congressman, good to have you back on the program, and congratulations, sir.
Thank you very much, and it's great to be back with you. Thanks, Tavis.
I am not going to ask you about all the White House stuff, offering the job. You turned it down. We know that story full well. Now, for that matter, the Joe Sestak story seems to be so old. On the one hand, we're now talking about the other guy that the White House offered a job to, in addition to Joe Sestak, to get him out of his race. I want to ask you about that. I do want to ask you, though, what you make of the Republican efforts on the Hill now to turn this into something more.
You know, I'm not surprised. I've been only in Washington, D.C. a couple years, but I've watched. When somebody doesn't have something to run on, they turn their attention away from it. And so you watch the Republicans that actually slammed this economy of ours, ripped it open, favored Wall Street. They don't have a record to run on. And so like Washington too often does, they just want to talk about politics, gamesmanship. It's not going to prevail. Come on up here, Tavis, to Pennsylvania. I remember seeing a farmer. When I decided to get in this race, I asked him how the recession was. And I'll never forget his reply. Not too bad. I was hurting so much already. They're not going to put up with it this time. Washington's not working. We're going to change it.
Why were you able, you think, in retrospect now, to defeat Arlen Specter?
I had a lot of support of people who felt like I did. And I actually believe that somehow, even in my party's establishment, the focus got off people. The focus got off where people in Washington, D.C. no longer were politicians. They were public servants, just like the sailors I had in the Navy. They could sense when a captain was in it for them. I think people in Pennsylvania, and I bet throughout this great nation of ours, really came to recognize somehow Washington, D.C. was no longer more concerned about their job than they were about their own. If I learned anything in the United States Navy, is that one was to be accountable for one's actions. Where's the accountability for what's happening right down there in the Gulf or in Wall Street, where so many voted to dismantle the regulations there, and now people have to work beyond 65 because they lost their savings? I ran, not for my own job in Congress, as I could have done simultaneously. I wanted to show people that I'd like to serve, but be accountable in terms of it's about your job, not mine. And I think that's what you're seeing across this nation, certainly here in Pennsylvania.
I'm going to come to some of those issues you just raised in just a moment. A couple other questions first, though. Arlen Specter, as you know, Congressman, is not the only example of one who switched parties in this election season and got the brakes beat off of him anyway. What's the lesson to those who think that switching parties to prolong one's career is strategically the right thing to do? What's the message to them?
I think if one switches a party out of conviction, not political calculation, well before an election, that's different. But I think, Tavis, the larger lesson is to the party establishment. You know, those who actually welcomed a political calculation for a 60th vote rather than shaping the best policy. And it's what John F. Kennedy said so well. Sometimes the party asks too much. Look, my party actually went to Washington, and I think it thought it was given a mandate to do something. It wasn't. We were given an opportunity to lead, and leadership means being back out, listening, and then stating where you are. And don't do things because of political calculation. Do it because of principle. And I honestly do believe in a principle compromise, but not a compromise of principle. And so my lesson is, if you're in it for conviction, people know that, and that's what happened.
Was it a principled compromise